Memo to self, make sure you bring your own headphones because I forgot them at home. Substitute teachers do things like that. As I am driving in from getting a workout, I'm not trying to go for humor there. I actually have time this kind of year to do things like that. And I forgot my bag that had my own headphones because it sounds like I'm listening to an AM radio in these headphones. And I worked for some pretty low-power AMs in the market. This sounds like the nighttime signal at the old 950 if I was sitting at 71st in Zionsville. No bueno. Greg Rakestraw is my name. I hope you are doing well. Jake is getting a Friday off, and to be honest, you're going to hear a little bit more of me. Not that you don't hear a lot of me on this frequency already or just whatever sporting event you might be going to as it sets up right now. But frankly, there was no Colts playoff push this year, obviously. And with Indiana just winning a national championship on Monday, and the Pacers having that season, and this is probably a Jake-level reference, certainly up JMV's wheelhouse as well. This Pacers season is going to be like that season at Dallas that they tried to write off because Patrick Duffy wasn't on the show. Eddie has no idea what I'm talking about. But if you're 55 at the very end of the demo that Sports Talk Radio wants to hit, you're just giving the old Jeremiah Johnson head nod, Robert Redford accordingly. You know exactly the mid-80s, 85, 86 reference that I am making. In other words, it's my way of saying it's kind of okay to sneak in a day or two off here and there if you're one of the talk show hosts, and it's part of one of the reasons and what I'm going to lead with today. We're still basking in the afterglow, and probably will for some time, of Monday night's national championship win by the Indiana Hoosiers. Heck, even with the snowpocalypse coming in, we are having a championship celebration in Bloomington, either at Memorial Stadium or Assembly Hall, whatever the case may be. And you'll be able to watch it on television. Maybe you can even listen to it here, whatever the case is going to happen from that standpoint coming up over the weekend. And I think back, because I referenced this when I was in for John on Tuesday, the day after winning a major championship is the easiest thing you can have as a sports talk show host. Literally, Jake and I ran the same playbook on Tuesday. It was 6 straight hours of phone calls. It was no guests. It was just all of us living in the moment and acknowledging the first major championship won by a team in our market for the last 19 years. And it made me think of the years leading up to that Colts Super Bowl victory, where the end of the season wasn't as fun. And it came at the hands of the New England Patriots 3 years running. And basically it was like a 1-week funeral for the next week, trying to rehash what went wrong and what's got to change and what do you got to do differently, et cetera. And so do we have the same rules of the road in terms of celebrating a championship? You know, if nothing else, can just be, hey, Indiana's your national football champs, call the show. And that's all we need to do. And probably that will last longer than just this week. But seemingly this week marks kind of a turning point where we start to talk about other things. Or potentially that has already happened. So with that, I welcome in Eddie Garrison to the show.
Good afternoon, Rick. How are you?
Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm well.
He, the company part of this equation, of course, producers of the Indiana Pacers radio network, which means he's working a day-night doubleheader this evening. With the Pacers in action tonight, oh, how I wish Pacers and Thunder was as important this evening as it was about 7 months ago, or even on the opening night of the season, for that matter. Pre-game coverage begins at 6:30 right here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. So, Eddie, I was in on Tuesday afternoon. I know what Tuesday's show is about. Mm-hmm. What have the shows been like the last couple of days? How much of a percentage has been about Indiana football? What are the other things that Jake and you have enlightened and informed Central Indiana about over the last 6 hours of this program until today?
I would say it's still 50% Indiana football, but the transition of who is returning, who is in the portal, who is graduating, who's entering the NFL draft, and what's the next step? Like, what does the next step look like? Like,
Right.
how are they viewed nationally going forward? Are they viewed as this team like Alabama and the Georgias, who's going to be a constant competitive team that should be in the conversation for a CFP championship moving forward? Have incorporated in Purdue basketball, Butler basketball, IU Indy as well. The shortcomings of IU basketball, the last 2 months, it feels like, since conference, not really 2 months, but the last month since the conference schedule started. The Pacers and how they approached the trade deadline with Benedict Mathurin, Jarris Walker. Are there other guys on the Pacers that we should be talking about that could be, dealt because of the aspect of having to match salaries if you want to get, depending on who you want to acquire at the deadline, what type of center best fits, moving forward, those types of things.
All right, so because you are literally in this building for every Pacers game, you are more locked in than most. You are more knowledgeable than most. Of all the topics that I've got from a guest standpoint, and I'll start to run down that list in a matter of moments, I'm not planning on talking any Pacers unless I do so with Kevin Bowen, who makes his weekly Friday appearance on the show at 1 o'clock. So from a Pacers standpoint, because I will give a mea culpa here, like I kind of keep track of scores, I have a general idea what the record is, and I am fully on Team Tank at this point. Like after winning a handful of games for a couple of weeks, did a great job in making sure that the game in Detroit, which I think was on Saturday night last weekend, heaven forbid, let's not win this one. Let's start resting guys to ensure that we get this thing going in the right way, which is not close to a playoff position, but closer to ping pong balls. And that will not be admitted. That will not be said. But frankly, that's the direction this needs to go. It is 3 more months of pain, and then we can all kind of take a deep breath in and just forget that this year ever happened. So with that, to the Pacers, the question is, have we seen enough on Benedict Mathurin and Jarris Walker to know, are you in or are you out long term? So, Eddie, take those one or both at a time. Do we have an answer after half of a season as to whether those guys need to be a part of this going forward, or simply they are trade pieces, they are cap space? The floor is yours.
I think one of those is a yes, that we know that he doesn't fit here, and that's Benedict Mathurin. I think
and that's the more easy answer.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. And you started to get that sense, as the playoffs started developing last year, because his minutes started slowly decreasing. He had a game against Oklahoma City where he won them a game, but then he went right back and lost them a game later on in the series. And he just doesn't seem to mesh with the style of play of wanting to constantly move the basketball, play a little bit more up-tempo. He wants to kind of like break you down in that isolation game more so. So I would expect that Benedict Mathurin's a player that will be traded at some point, whether that's at the deadline here in, I think, 13 days, or if that's somebody who they try to, dangle out there in the offseason. I sit in the camp of
it would have to be a sign and trade in the offseason, right?
Yeah, exactly. Correct, yeah. He's a restricted free agent, and it could get messy, could get similar to how DeAndre Ayton's exit with Phoenix went not too long ago, where the Phoenix Suns were trying to trade him at the deadline. They weren't able to do so. Then the Pacers signed him to that contract extension, forcing Phoenix to match. And I feel like there could be a team out there that could do that to Indiana, and Indiana could end up in a bad spot to where, they end up paying Benedict Mathurin a dollar amount that they're not comfortable paying, and you've got to match it because you can't let them walk for nothing. And then on the Jarris Walker front, Tony East talked about this yesterday with Jake a little bit, and it's just been so hard to evaluate him because they've asked him to do so many different things, and I don't think we know, and I don't know if Jarris knows quite yet what his role is in the NBA. He's still 22 years old, so he's still trying to figure out which position he best fits at, who he best plays with on the floor, what works well for him and what doesn't work well. So all those things are still to be determined with Jarris, and I think he can be a part of the future, but just need to see more still.
And frankly, Jarris has one more year on his rookie deal. And then he is 1 year behind the timeline of Benedict Mathurin. Your probably hand isn't forced as much on him. But I bring those guys up because basically, once the injuries started to set in, and once we went from, hey, even without Tyrese Halliburton, we think this is a mid-40s win team. This is potentially a team that's probably around that, sorry, go ahead and make the hand gesture, right around that 6-7 line in terms of the Eastern Conference. And then a dude kept getting hurt every day. Well, that guy's out for a month. Well, that guy's out for 2 months. Well, that guy's out for 3 months. And once this became, hey, kids, let me tell you about the 1996-97 San Antonio Spurs, which led them getting Tim Duncan, and then 2 years later led to an NBA championship. Once that became the move for this year, other than general losing, then it became player development. What do you have in Benedict Mathurin, and what do you have in Jarris Walker? And so from a Pacers standpoint, that continues to be the question. And the answer on Mathurin might be an exit sooner rather than later from what Eddie is talking about. But again, this kind of goes over the, all right, now what portion that we have kind of gotten to. And so here are the guests we'll have on the show today that might answer some of those questions. One thing that I will do, and one thing that we as the home of Indiana University football broadcast, 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan, are going to do is try to string this out as long as possible, because now you care. What was the stat that I saw going around Twitter last night? More than 30 million people tuned in to watch the national championship game last night. It was one of the most watched non-NFL broadcasts in years from a sports standpoint. So people nationally care about this team. And my goodness, Fernando Mendoza was making the rounds. He was on Fallon last night. He was on the Today Show this morning. He was on Good Morning America this morning. Kid has star and number one draft pick written all over him. Handled himself very well in the two interviews that I saw, which was the Today Show and which was Fallon after the fact last night. So we will find a way to continue to bring in Indiana football into the conversation. And as Eddie said off the top of the show, the now what that applies to Indiana. And as I told the morning show guys, when I had my weekly hit with them at 8 o'clock, think of this as the BCAD moment for Indiana football. It changes how we, as in the media, as in a radio station of this magnitude here in the Hoosier State, now Indiana football has a seat at the big kids table. And I'll be honest with you, I've been in the program director's chair in this radio station, and we would always reference the home of Indiana football, or here in the building, we've been the home of the Indiana University radio rights for more than 20 years, at least for football, and frankly, longer than that from a basketball standpoint. But it wasn't something that we talked a great deal about in terms of content, like the conversation we're having together right now. They're going to be going forward. We'll talk a heck of a lot more IU football next fall than even we did this fall with the success they had. We'll talk a lot more IU football in the spring, which we never did. It was like, oh, by the way, the Indiana spring game is coming up this weekend. It's opening up for Little 500. Like it was the JV to Little 5 weekend. Not now. Now you can sell tickets for that thing. Now it's important. So we'll find a way to weave in Indiana conversation into the show. And the best way that I thought about doing that today was thinking, I've got a lot of friends that played football at Indiana University. How about I get one of them on the show today? And that is my friend Dan Thompson. And Dan was there during the previous best era of Indiana football. Dan was there 5 years, and he played in either 3 bowl games or 4, one of the two. I know his last game was a bowl game, and he was on the last bowl team to win before New Year's Day. And of all the stats we could give you about Indiana football, I think my favorite one is the fact that the program had won 3 bowl games in their history through December the 31st, and from January the 1st through January the 19th, they've won 3 more bowl games since that time. Dan and his family were at the game. Dan and I have talked IU football for years, and again, before I have now had my 14 years and fingers crossed for 15 and more with the Indianapolis Colts as the host of the postgame show, I spent 1 year as the host of the Indiana University postgame call-in show 20 years ago. Terry Hepner's first year as the head coach of the Hoosiers. And we were excited about 4-7. And we would have shows where the phone calls were minimal. Or we would have shows like where Ohio State was playing in Bloomington, And we became the Ohio State postgame call-in show because all of their fans would call the show on their way back across the state line. Things have changed a little bit. So we'll talk with Dan coming up in the next segment of the show. As alluded to, Kevin Bowen will be on the program because we do enjoy talking to each other on the Fan. KB and I have our annual Notre Dame road trip coming up on Tuesday night to watch a struggling Fighting Irish team, but it's really the camaraderie and the experience more so than just going to see Notre Dame basketball when he and I head up to St. Joseph County and the Notre Dame campus on Tuesday night. Since Eddie alluded to the fact that we've talked more Purdue basketball, and our buddy Todd Meyer is really concerned about his Boilers, as evidenced by our pre-show conversation that Eddie might have heard, but none of the rest of you would have. We're going to talk to Jerry Palm. Now, Jerry, for many years, was the bracketologist for CBS Sports. These days, he's back to his independent status. Palm Brackets is where you can find his work. But basically, with Jerry, we're going to go like this. Notre Dame. Can we stop talking about them? Butler and the Big East as a whole. What does it look like for them? Butler started to pick up a few more wins. There's probably only 3 teams that you can feel pretty confident are going to be NCAA tournament teams in the Big East. Obviously, UConn being one of those. We'll talk about what a path to a tournament berth might look like for the Bulldogs. What's going on with Indiana? And again, a reminder, folks, they play tonight. They are playing at the Rack, which is no longer called the Rack, but this is going to sound demeaning. It's a glorified high school gym, and I love that. Like, I want to go see Rutgers play at home at some point in time. So Indiana's at Rutgers. That is an early start tonight. 6 o'clock is the tip time. Pre-game at 5 over on our sister station, literally down the hall on 93 WIBC. And yes, we'll talk about the Boilers, and I will talk briefly about them here. They've not been playing well as of late. They let a game slip away the other night at UCLA, and it appears that their big 3 are all going through a slump or carrying an injury all simultaneously. Frankly, Purdue is so good and so experienced that I don't care what they do for the next 7 weeks as long as they get any level of a decent seed in the NCAA tournament. Their season starts March 15th. And for those who don't have your sports calendar planned, if you had kind of made your planning through the IU football championship game, and then it's just kind of dark space after that, March 15th is Selection Sunday. And knowing the Final Four is here, if Purdue's a 1 seed, great. If they're a 2 seed, okay. If they're a 3 seed, well, this means different color jersey. You play the same seed you would be if you were the 2. With all roads leading back to here, I'm not trying to take away any enjoyment you have of watching the Boilermakers for the next 7 weeks. I want them to be successful, but I don't care what they accomplish in the regular season. With this group, it's all about, can you do what you did 2 years ago and then win one more game? So we'll talk about that with Jerry Palm of palmbrackets.com coming up later in the 1 o'clock hour. Jake, when he takes off on a Friday, is nice enough to leave a segment for me so I can go walk around. I can go watch Carl circle the parking lot or here at the Radio 1 headquarters. Maybe I'll sneak down to Quill's and get me a coffee. Whatever the case may be, he will have Dr. George Lowley from Franciscan Health as part of his Feel Good Fridays. And one thing that Jake is passionate about as well, for they are a sponsor, that'd be the Indy Ignite. It is volleyball season in Indianapolis, Major League Volleyball at that. And the Ignite in their second season are 3-0 to start the season. And Lydia Martin, middle blocker for the Indy Ignite, will be joining us. Weather be damned, the Ignite have their home opener tomorrow night against the Omaha Supernovas. What a team. What a name. 7 o'clock is the first serve time at the Fishers Event Center. Again, that will be come heck or high water from a weather standpoint. And I will give you an example because I was scheduled to have a high school basketball game tomorrow night. That has been moved, and I no longer have a high school basketball game tomorrow night. I do have a couple events on Sunday that are going to happen regardless of the weather. I've got IU Indy and Purdue Fort Wayne. You can catch that on My Indy TV 23 with coverage beginning at 2 o'clock. And then where you can hear it on this radio station, myself and Kristen Hazley will have the girls basketball state pairings for the upcoming 51st IHSAA Girls Basketball State Championship. And again, we're doing that regardless of how much snow gets dumped on us on the next 48 hours. We are doing that show. Maybe have just a bit fewer watch parties around the state of Indiana than we normally do for shows like that. 6 o'clock is when that happens on Sunday. I do have Pike and Carmel this evening at 7:30 on my Indy TV. I do have soccer Saturday, so there's a Garciño reference for you, Eddie, tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. And I'm going to do the Marion doubleheader tomorrow afternoon. That's going to happen. I think that's going to get in before the weather gets in. So a slightly less busy weekend, but still obviously a very busy weekend. I've got a lot of the guests covered, but obviously if you want to be a part of the show, 317-239-1070 is both the phone number and the text number. Now, apparently, I'm not here enough to qualify to be able to get the text line where I can read it. So if you text the show, Eddie has to read them to me. I hope that's okay. If you want to talk to me directly, which I am perfectly fine, then use the voice option at 317-239-1070. You can obviously tweet to me at Greg Rakestraw, and if you know the bat phone, I will share that with you as well. But like I said, we are now a college football market. We used to be a market that would occasionally talk college football. But when the national champion is just down the road from you, then you give a little more credence to stories like this. And apparently, there will be only a slight tweak to the college football playoff format next year. You had heard that 16 or 24 teams could be playing in the playoff next year. No, because the two true superpowers, and let's face it, God, I love crowing about this. The Big Ten really is the college football superpower. I mean, we have won 3 consecutive champions, not those bums and has-beens from the SEC. But financially, those are the two superpowers. One wanted 16 teams in the playoff. The other wanted 24, apparently. So we're going to stay at 12 since there was no agreement. So apparently, here is how this is going to play out. The 4 power conference champs will get an automatic berth. Notre Dame will get a berth if they are in the top 12. And everything else will stay the same. So 12 teams next year for the CFP and no changes on that front. The other thing that I'll share off the top of the show before we get to our next breaking, it's IU football related. And I'll admit to you, I think as the substitute teacher, I can do this. I do listen to other sports talk shows, sources, etc., than just what's on the fan. If it makes you feel better, I was doing this via satellite radio and not like an AM frequency, since they're on something of a competitor, if this station truly has a competitor in the market at this point. But listen to the Dan Patrick show on the way in. He was making a pretty good argument for the Raiders trading the number 1 pick. In other words, and why am I bringing that up here? Well, because it's Fernando he's talking about. That's not denigrating Fernando Mendoza, by the way. I think there is zero doubt in anybody's mind that that kid is the number 1 pick in the draft, regardless of whom is taking him. I think he's a perfect fit for Las Vegas because they need somebody to market that franchise around. And it's tough to pass on what you think is a franchise quarterback. And I think that kid has the goods, the combination of what he's got mentally and physically. Probably not a can't-miss prospect from just arm strength, from just his running ability, but because his floor seems to be so high, and frankly, the X/it factor that he seems to have. Can I mention again that he was on Jimmy Fallon last night, and he was on Good Morning America today, and he was on the Today Show and the Raiders have been hot garbage since they moved to Vegas. Now, they have a franchise following from decades ago and prison inmates and things like that that seems to follow that team, which Mendoza would be the opposite of that. But Dan's point that he was making was look at the haul the Bears got for Bryce Young 3 years ago. And eventually it gave them Caleb Williams the next year, and it gave them DJ Moore immediately, and it gave them additional draft picks. And the Raiders are a team that in one sense, they could use all the help they could get since they have been largely non-competitive. But at the same time, you got Ashton Genty, you got Brock Bowers, you bring in Mendoza. Seemingly, your future is set from an offensive skill position standpoint. So something we can talk about as well. And honestly, it's conversations like that we're going to talk about a lot over the next 3 months. Again, it's a way to bring IU football into the conversation. But with the Pacers season being the opposite of memorable, and with the Colts not having a first-round pick, what do we talk about? Oh, well, the guy that played down the road is going to be the number one pick in the draft. And just how many Indiana Hoosiers will hear their names called in Pittsburgh that last weekend in April? With that, the phone lines are open. Dial us up now, 317-239-1070. Tweet to me at Greg Rakestraw, or you could text the show at that same number as well. However, we will simply spend the next segment of the show reminiscing about the season that was and the night that was in South Florida on Monday night with a good friend and a pretty good tight end in his days at Indiana University as well. Dan Thompson joins us next. It's Greg Rakestraw in for Jay Query, and you are listening on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
It is Query and Company. No query, just the company. He gets a Friday afternoon off. My name is Greg Rakestraw, Eddie Garrison on the ones and twos, and we'll do the typical substitute teacher thing, and that is trying to get to as many guests on the program as possible. Again, Indiana football will still be our dominant topic, but we're now 4 days removed from a championship. We will start to sprinkle in a few other things as we go along. But off the top of the show, no, we're talking about the Hoosiers. And I thought about this knowing I was going to have this assignment for the last 2 or 3 days. Who do I want to get on that's a little bit different voice-wise than what you normally get to hear? And I thought about all of my friends that played at IU. This is the closest friend I have of that group. He and family wouldn't have missed this for a world. I saw their pictures on Facebook from Hard Rock on Monday night, and I hope his tan is matching his smile. Dan Thompson joins us now on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing fantastic, Greg. How about yourself?
I'm good. Have you made your way back to Central Indiana, or have you just moved operations to South Beach at this point?
I would love to stay down there a little bit longer for sure. You know, just reminiscing with some of the old teammates and friends. We had a great time down there, but nope, came back to the cold, and I made it Indiana week, so I wore a IU national championship quarter zip shirt, whatever it may be, every day since I've been back to the office. So,
well, you
nice
run the office. Your name's on the business. You can set the dress code, and you can get to wear whatever you want to. How many of the 3 bowl games did you attend?
We attended them all. So we started with the Big Ten championship, and then out for the Rose Bowl, which was absolutely amazing. I mean, not only beating a blue blood in, Alabama, but just having all of the IU fans there was just an incredible, almost fulfilling experience to have them win. When we had the IU cheer, you could hear the IU echo around the bowl throughout the game. It was fantastic. We took the RV down to the Peach Bowl, and that was, great. We had Kelly Hammonds, another friend of mine. She and I did put a tailgate on, and we had about 300 people, about 60 former teammates and friends celebrating the last time we were down, as well as this team, obviously. And then, of course, I chose not to drive the RV all the way down to Miami. We just flew down and spent time with friends down there. That's a crazy place to watch at least a tailgate for the game. Not as easy as everything else, but
now, given the amount of money that Dan just spent in the month, we're going to have to change his office to the Thompson Not As Wealth Management Group. He'll build it back up in the market for you soon. I promise you that. One of the things that hit me knowing you and I would have a conversation about this on the air or off the air, because there has been such of, my God, this is the losingest program in the history of major college football, and now look at them. My guess is, since you were a part of the most sustained run of success before the last 2 years, you might take a little umbrage with that. So what is it like saying, hey, wait a minute, we were pretty good back in my day too?
That's an excellent point, Greg, is that our teammates and I were kind of like, wait a minute, we did win games. We were ranked in the top 25. We did go to bowl games. We had, I forget, I think it was 27 people during the class that I had the classes that I had was in the NFL and played in the NFL. And so we had talent. What we didn't have was the commitment from the university that is now there. And so if you look at what we had success, but then it got to be a little embarrassing that I was on the last winning bowl team. I'm 55 tomorrow. So, I mean, that's a long time since we were winning, a bowl game. So we are so thankful that the program is now supported more by the university, but thankful for these players. I mean, I was blessed that Fernando played with my nephew out at Cal. Okay. And I got to meet him at my nephew's wedding this summer. It was the first time that I really knew what kind of young man he was. My sister introduced me to him, and he's like, when did you play? And I said, well, it was 89 through 93. And before I could say another word, he was like Well, that's Bill Mallory's years. He's the winningest coach in IU sports history. You guys went to several bowl games. He goes, were you on the Peach Bowl? Were you on? And he went through. He'd only been there for 3 months, and he knew more about IU football than almost anybody else I had talked to, outside of the players. And it was genuine. He was just a genuine person. And it's so fun to watch him now and to see that truly is the person that he is, that you see, with the interviews and the way he leads his team and leads by his faith. Can't say enough good things about Fernando.
Again, Dan Thompson is our guest, talking about Monday night's national championship game, and again, getting his unique perspective as a player and former analyst on the radio network here on 93.5 and 107 for the Fan. In your 5 years at IU, 3 bowl games or 4, what was the total?
3 bowl games.
3. Okay, that's still very impressive.
Went to the Peach Bowl, the Copper Bowl, and the Independence Bowl.
Right. Independence Bowl, I remember, was your last game. Remember, obviously, the Copper Bowl, obviously, was the last win until New Year's Day. When you were in school, was the goal always a Rose Bowl? Was a thought of a national championship ever something that was truly in your mind?
That's a great point. We didn't really think about national championships. You thought if you went to the Rose Bowl, that kind of was the national championship.
Sure.
Because, back then it was voted on. And, that was the one thing that our senior year, we had lost a close game at Penn State. We had lost we fumbled going for the winning score against Wisconsin earlier in the year. And then we lost a close one at Ohio State. And that year was really one of the best years they've had since, the 87 team, when if they'd have beat Michigan State, they would have gone to the Rose Bowl. So it was one of our last chances, if you would, while we were there to play. The interesting part was that we were told that we couldn't go to the Citrus Bowl because the school wouldn't guarantee the tickets. So we ended up that year 8-3, third in the Big Ten, going to the Independence Bowl in Shreveport, Louisiana, instead of the Citrus Bowl on New Year's Day. And of course, they took Michigan because they were, guaranteed the tickets were spent. So when I don't take it lightly when I say the university has finally gotten behind the football program, and it's so great to see. Of course, that's taking nothing away from the talent. I mean, if you look across the board, that's an incredibly talented group of young men and coaching staff on the team now. So it's wonderful to watch.
When you first met Kurt or first heard him talk, at what point in time in the last 25 months do you say, hey, we've got something special here?
Well, the first time that I met him, I wasn't impressed at all. We were at the coaches convention, and I had introduced myself as a former player, and I'm friends with Bob Bostad, the offensive line coach, which I still believe was the greatest deal from a coaching staff we've had from a position coach, because he's one of the top 3, I think, offensive line coaches in the country. And he introduced me to Coach Signetti, and Coach talked to me for about, 2.5 minutes, and he left. I'm like, oh, okay, that was uninspiring,
right.
That piece. But from everybody that I've talked to, he's maybe not as great at shaking hands and kissing babies as he is as coaching football, and he just wants to hole up in his office and live, sleep, eat, drink football. So you can't argue with the results, Greg. It's absolutely amazing how prepared and how complete this team is. If you look at the lack of missed tackles, the yards after catch are so limited by this defense, it's unbelievable. And then what they're able to do offensively by utilizing, I think one of the underrated players in that team is the tight end. Riley Nowakowski is just, the way he blocks is outstanding, and, still can catch the ball, well, but his blocks just open things up for people, and it's just a complete team.
Your membership in the tight end union has been approved for one more year to give the love to the tight end. Well done on your part there. Again, Dan Thompson joining me, Greg Rakestraw, in for Jay Query, here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. So, all right, so I'll tweak that last question a little bit. If he didn't wow you with a first impression, and frankly, I met Kurt last spring and kind of had a similar thought on that front as well. So with that, as last year starts, what were things you were seeing on the field and go, hey, that looks different? Hey, I've not seen this before, or I haven't seen this in a long time.
The first thing, this is going to sound weird, was more disappointment. As a fan, you're looking at, all right, why are we not playing Louisville? Why are we not, allowing the fans to see, some of these teams that, we think we can beat overall. So seeing that he had a plan in place to build from the ground up, the first few games, maybe the talent wasn't what we had hoped to face. I mean, look at this year. He played, Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, Indiana State before we hit into Illinois. I mean, but you could see each step along the way, the team was getting more and more fundamentally sound and getting more confidence leading into the Big Ten. And then, of course, when you just drill Illinois 63-10, that's I think we all kind of jumped on board then.
I think everybody is with that. All right. What would Bill Mallory be saying about this whole experience?
That's and not to get emotional about it, but I was sitting there in the stadium afterwards watching the whole celebration, and Coach passed several years ago, and just thinking how happy, how fulfilled he would be, for this program. He would be so proud, of Coach Signetti, and the players. And I talked about it with some of my former teammates. I know Chris Dyer and I had mentioned it, that John Pacey and I talked about it a little bit, Torrey Drake. I mean, these different guys that it was like, Coach he'd really be happy. He would have his chest out high, he'd have his jaw locked, and it would be all, I knew Indiana football could be there. I can just hear him saying it.
Again, Dan Thompson joining us. I think I'll let you go, my friend. It's always great to catch up with you, both on the air or off. You have always been a very proud alum, and Dan and I see each other now, not as much as we used to, but we still work together every year on the Old Oak and Bucket Luncheon. And I think the days of saying they're playing just for pride, we can retire that statement now, given the fact that Indiana has won a national championship. How do you carry yourself differently when you sell somebody, I played football at Indiana University? How is that a different statement for you now than maybe it would have been 2 years ago or longer ago?
You know me really well, is that I'm very proud to have played football in Indiana, no matter what the records were. The young men that I played with back in the day are not only talented, but they're phenomenal people. And Coach Mallory and his staff did a great job of recruiting that type of person. The difference is the reception now. The reception by different people. There used to be a core people who just were IU football fans, and they were small in number. And now you talk to people, and they're like, oh, wow, you played IU football? And it's the same people I talked to, a year or two ago that really didn't care at all. And now it's a different reception by these people. And, I think it's just great for the university, for the team, for the sport. I mean, look at all the money that's flowed through, not just Bloomington, but the entire state of Indiana by the success of the football program. So I think a lot of people are benefiting from that, and that helps us as well as former players. I mean, the most enjoyment I've had through this is, aside from the success in the team, is this is the first time I've seen a lot of my, former teammates. I mean, everybody gets busy, and, when you're not winning, we try to have reunions, and some guys get back, some guys don't. But, you go to the Rose Bowl, and that was a goal, the number one goal of the program from a football, performance standpoint, when we were all there. So seeing all the guys that were able to come out to the Rose Bowl, and then more guys at the Peach Bowl, and then seeing, more guys that, the Independence Bowl, the Von Dunbars, the Anthony Thompsons, the Trent Greens, the, Thomas Lewis, all these guys who played in the NFL, and there's so many more, Al Thurman, Torrey Drake. I mean, there's probably 60 or 70 guys that we saw, off the teams for those years. It's just, just amazing, and it's just fun, Greg. It's just back to fun.
So you're telling me I'm playing in a bigger room next year for the Old Oak and Bucket Luncheon? I should prepare more jokes and a bigger speech?
More guys that give me a hard time that we don't do a good enough job of getting the word out. But, I think the word.
What do you think we're doing right here, buddy?
I know you're doing a great job, Greg. And as always, I hope you know this, is that we always appreciate you're such, a fundamental part of our success with that Oak and Bucket Luncheon. And your wit and your candor is always much appreciated, as well as your knowledge about the game, obviously. But thank you again for being there as our MC. You
read that exactly as I written it down for you. So thank you for following the script. I appreciate you. Tell the rest of the family I said hello. We'll see you soon.
All right. Thank you, my friend.
Dan Thompson, again, he represents the IU football alum, because I guarantee you his experience on Monday and this entire way has been the way that some of the teammates that he referenced or other ones I know, like Bob Kaiser, et cetera, it's probably the way they feel right now, 4 days after the fact as well. All right, short segment when we come back. Kevin Bowen at 1 o'clock. It's Greg Rakestraw in for Jay Query. And again, the appearance by Dan was on the Java House Peel and Pork guest line. Back with more in a moment. 93.5 and 107.5 FM.
You're listening to Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Hello to all of you that are listening via the airwaves on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Maybe you're watching on the YouTube lounge, whatever the case may be. Thank you for spending part of your Friday with us. It is not Jay Query. He is getting a Friday off. My name is Greg Rakestraw. Eddie Garrison on the ones and twos with you until 3. JMB, I want to say, is it Rally House? Is that correct today? Obviously, the place to get your Indiana University championship swag. Kevin Bowen coming up at the top of the hour. Jerry Palm will join us to talk a little college brackets. And again, Purdue is in the tournament. What does their seeding look like? Notre Dame may be off the bubble at this point. Butler doing enough to hang around, and Indiana maybe playing themselves out, but there's still 7 weeks of season left to go. So we'll talk about that with Jerry. Other story I want to get to with Jerry, and the next time that I am in this studio and not doing Soccer Saturday or potentially the Girls Pairing Show or On the Horizon Weekly, when I'm filling in on one of our daytime shows, I'm going to talk more about the story of Miami of Ohio. They are 20-0. To start the year. And now that we are past the national championship game, we can kind of get to some of those other stories. However, there is one story from the championship game that I wanted to bring up, and that was that obviously this game, wildly popular in the state of Indiana. Duh. Not a surprise. But this game was also wildly popular across the nation. Here are the numbers to back that up. Reading from Yahoo Sports, this article posted towards the end of the day yesterday. The victory averaged 30.1 million viewers for ESPN and peaked at an audience of 33.2. It is the most watched national championship game since the first one of the 4-team era. That was Ohio State and Oregon. Little did we know that'd be a Big Ten game a few years later. 34.1 million viewers watched that. It is the fourth watched national championship game on record. Now, I would assume they mean since we officially had a BCS championship game starting in 1998 would be my guess, but that's still fourth out of a 30-year swath. That's pretty impressive. The other ones that had more of an audience, Texas USC, which is one of the all-time college football games after the 2005 season. Vince Young, January 4th of 2006. I was actually in my car on the way back from doing an IUPUI game, so that's where I remember listening to that game on the radio. That game drew 35.6 million viewers. And then Alabama and Texas in 2010 had 30.8. That game ended up being one of the biggest duds because it was at the Rose Bowl. That's where Colt McCoy got hurt on like the first series. And it just completely took the air out of the building when that took the case. However, here is the story to me to give you the wow factor as to Indiana football isn't a big deal just in Indiana, but across the country. Indiana's win on Monday, and again, I read, Nick Schultz wrote the article for Yahoo Sports that I am reading. Indiana's win on Monday is the most watched non-NFL sports telecast since Game 7 of the 2016 World Series. Eddie, quickly, do you remember whom would have been in Game 7 of the 2016 World Series?
The Chicago Cubs and the
Cleveland
Indians. Yeah.
Yeah, Cubs winning a championship for the first time in over a century. If you want to compare between Ohio State and Notre Dame, a couple of relatively large brands playing for last year's national championship, 8 more million viewers watched this year than did last year. We'll talk about that and more with Kevin Bowen. Of course, I'm not sure KB needs an introduction on this radio station, so he and I will have a chat next. We might sneak in some Notre Dame basketball. 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Jake Query getting to enjoy a 3-day weekend. Greg Rakestraw is my name, filling in for Jake. Kevin Bowen on the other line. We'll get to him coming up in a matter of moments. In fact, he is ready as we speak on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. I'll tell you more about our friends at Java House in a matter of moments. I mean, it's fair. I was on your show this morning. You can be on my show this afternoon. That's the way this works, right?
No, I was going to say, I was very happy when I was informed that you were filling in today. So great to hear your voice.
All right, so people have asked us to make the buddy trip to South Bend like a live stream event. Do we need to take along like the fans' social media team to make this a whole day thing on Tuesday?
Well, you know what? I have heard that. I've also heard we should auction off the back seats.
Should I ask for more tickets?
Unfortunately, I don't think those would be too hard to come by with how the attendance typically is. But, maybe down the road, right, we can auction that off, give some money away to charity or something.
All right. I was going to go with pure profit. If you're going to bring in charity and actually do something good with this, well, that's what makes you a better man than me. All right. So what I am doing today is trying to figure out what is the proper balance of still talking Indiana football, but not completely ignoring everything else that is going on in sports. So Tuesday's a day where it's all IU football. What have your show been like? What has your show been like over the last 3 days?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly still been mostly IU football. We've sprinkled in some. Totally need to realize we have listeners that are not just IU football fans, but at the same time, it's a story that, frankly, is a national story considering the historical nature to it. So, we've definitely had a little bit more of, IU on it. We talked to Dave Dunn, Fernando Mendoza's high school coach, on Wednesday, so enjoyed that conversation. He actually joined us right before the Heisman Trophy ceremony. So he had some interesting tidbits. And, obviously, Rick, when you continue to think back on Monday, and now you're starting to see the D'Angelo Pons news declaring for the draft, Mendoza, I think we're still up in the air about Omar Cooper Jr. It's probably been a little bit of transition into like, okay, what is next year and everything. And honestly, when it comes to the Colts, they are, I guess until the Jim Irsay news or, if you want to play Lou Anarumo with the Buffalo Bills, they are one of the quieter teams so far of the offseason, just given the stability that they're running it back with and obviously not in the playoffs.
All right, so if there is one element of not just the game on Monday, but of all of this, of the fact that you and I are having a sane conversation about Indiana is the defending national champions in football, what's the one thing that you still can't wrap your brain around that this is actually happening?
Well, there's so many angles you could go with, Ray. I will quote, a man that I had as a professor back in my undergrad days, and I believe somebody as well, and he has, hired me to be an adjunct professor down there 7 years ago. Galen Clavio is one of the diehardest and diehard all IU football fans, and he has described old IU as it was always Lucy pulling the football away. Like that's how it always was. And something I brought up this morning on the show is, as we get into championship weekend here for the NFL, we've described the Chiefs in recent years as they feel inevitable. Like they're always going to make the critical play. They're always going to make the third down conversion. Kelsey's going to find that yellow line. They're going to get the big penalty on defense if they need it, et cetera, et cetera. And if you look at Monday night for Indiana and really this whole season, they felt inevitable. And I'm not just talking about maybe a break or two, but they also created 99% of that, whether it is with, 4th and 5 and 4th and 7 and 3rd and 7 and 3rd and 5, all in the fourth quarter, and they convert all of them. If you look at the block punt, again, I keep on going back to that play. That's a play where, they had taken their punt team wasn't on the field. They left their defense out there because it was still 4th and 1. That's a play you see a lot of teams, don't even really try to go after the punter in that situation. And Mikal Kamara goes after the punter and, makes a great play. And obviously that's one of the plays of the game. Obviously the call to go for it on 4th and 5, and instead of Mendoza tripping over Pat Coogan, to make the Lucy analogy, he finds his way into the end zone. So, I would just say for a program that has often been the butt of jokes, and when those moments have arisen of like, oh my gosh, here we go, we can pull off this big upset, it's just, wait, I know how this is going to end. I don't need to watch it. It was the reverse of it all season long.
One of the things that, again, we all view all elements of life through the prism of our own experience. I was a radio program director at two different stations. So I think about almost the what now, not just for Indiana as a program, but how we cover Indiana as a program. You have now been in the sports content business in this market for the last 14 years. What sort of seat at the table does Indiana football have now, like in comparison to the Colts, the Pacers, IU basketball, et cetera?
Yeah, that's another really good question. I'm just going off of, numbers, after wins, here or this playoff run. I mean, the Monday after a Colts game, I think is still king in this town. I'm just strictly going off of, numbers that we would have to kind of back that up. That Pacer playoff run, certainly challenged some of that. And, I would say the Indiana run would be right there. So I'm sure it will continue to push. And anytime you're a consistent winner, you're going to be there. You say 14 years, when I've done, IU basketball talk on the radio, over that time, or, much more here in the last 5 or 6 years, they obviously haven't won, or at least at the level that, Indiana fans want. So I don't think that's maybe been as front and center as it could be if they were. But yeah, I would, I think IU football, especially under such a figure that is Curt Cignetti, I would think that they will continue to be right up there with the professional sports, which, again, in a professional sports market, I mean, we are not Louisville. We are not, one of the SEC towns where it's college sports, 24/7. That's a lot. I mean, the NFL, just look at the ratings that Broncos Bills got over the weekend. I mean, it's insane how it is. Granted, certainly look at the ratings that Indiana and Miami drew on Monday night. So I would say it is close, but it's probably always going to be pro sports.
All right, since you talked NFL, let's move into kind of everything else. What is your give a darn factor about the two games on Sunday?
Yeah, it's not as high as it normally is. I would say, certainly Rams Seahawks is the better game. And, I love watching Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay and that team, play. So I am looking forward to that. The Jarrett Stidham story is just kind of it's just a very unique one. I mean, you don't get a lot of that type of, here's your quarterback for the, AFC Championship game where you have a historic defense and, they're like the biggest home underdog, I believe, in championship weekend. And, that there is kind of a Cinderella feel to it. And for some reason, I don't know, I'd have to go back to like Nick Foles' history, but like Foles, he started games late in that season once Carson Wentz scored ACL, and the Bo Nix injury happened and so late in the game as well. So I do think that is just kind of a cool story, but I think with the NFL, we don't like the NFL so much for like Cinderella necessarily. Right. We just like it more for the parody of it. So given our news cycle over the last week, Rake, it has very understandably taken a backseat to it all. I think if Buffalo is still playing, that storyline to me is always, really cool just because of their fandom and the small market and all the near misses. So we obviously don't have that, but, talk to me when there's 6 inches of snow outside my house on Sunday and I'll be locked in.
I will reveal my age. When I think of quarterbacks to make the Super Bowl in backup fashion, I still think of Jeff Hostetler first before I think of Nick Foles. You may not because you're a young pup compared to me, but Hostetler is still the guy that I think of because Foles, I thought, was so much more of a known commodity than Hostetler would have been when he led the Giants Super Bowl win in Super Bowl 25.
Yeah, like think about that, right? So Super Bowl 25, Foles obviously was a handful of years ago. I mean, we're at what? Super Bowl 60?
I think he was 52. Does that sound right? Ish?
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, it was even, longer than that. I mean, that's kind of wild. One quarterback in the last 35 years. And, I get it. It is quarterback, but you would think at some point you would have found, a time or two, even if the defense just does all the heavy lifting to get you there. Because, you have to win one game. Now, it's a big game, but we see backup quarterbacks, win games in the NFL. And, again, he's got the historic, defense. But, granted, New England's played really well. And I'd say that's probably the other thought I've had this week of just I can't imagine being a Titans fan and thinking, why did we fire Mike Vrabel again? Can you walk me through all of? They were the 1 seed with Ryan Tannehill. That was remarkable. And I get Derrick Henry was doing Derrick Henry things, but still, that one is beyond head scratching to me.
Since you referenced Buffalo, I don't know what your schedule's been like since signing off at 10 o'clock. Do you see who's getting interviewed for the head coaching job in Buffalo?
I did. Uncle Phil, yes, I did see that. And did I see Josh Allen has been sitting in on all these interviews as well? I find that to be interesting.
Well, Lamar Jackson is kind of had that in Baltimore to a certain degree. It doesn't surprise me on Josh Allen. Listen, I could see Phillip Rivers being an NFL head coach. Is he an NFL head coach without having ever been an NFL assistant first?
Well, and the one thing, too, is just the family dynamic for Rivers. And not to go over the Rivers family tree, but, he's got the son that'll be a senior in high school this coming year. And I believe there's 3 sons. I believe it's of the 10, it's 7 girls, 3 boys. One of the other boys will be a freshman, and I think Phillip has already said depth chart is out. He's the backup. So, if you're Phillip Rivers and, clearly he's had this goal to coach his sons,
right?
A la I believe his father did to him, then I would assume he would look at that as, oh my gosh, the senior year of high school. And again, St. Michael's, I'm pretty sure they've had kind of near misses in their state, championship runs here in recent years. Why not coach Gunner, the oldest, this senior year, then coach the second son, and then, the NFL maybe becomes a little bit more realistic. At that point, I think about half of the 10 kids are out of the house, they're off in college, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe you feel a little bit more inclined than, move the whole family over to or up to Western New York. Seems like quite the undertaking here. So I'm fascinated by it. It's super entertaining. I think Buffalo, no matter who they hire, will be really entertaining just because Sean McDermott has quite the track record of 6 straight years of the playoff win. I think they're only one of 4 teams to have done that in NFL history. But yeah, part of me thinks Rivers is just doing this for intel, but who knows? He definitely didn't downplay it. Rake, you were there late in the season. When he was asked those questions, he definitely did not sweep it under the rug. He expressed some interest.
I have all the respect in the world. And I generally think that Phillip truly wants to coach his kids. And you and I think, even had an off-air conversation about, all right, let's talk about his kids, the boys versus the girls, and how big of a gap there is kind of after these two get through high school. Maybe 4 years down the road, he becomes an NFL quarterback coach or an offensive coordinator. That's all well and good. And I know that Phillip played an era where he made a good amount of money in the National Football League. Have you seen what they're paying NFL head coaches these days? And he and the missus have a lot of mouths to feed. There is something to be said about that end of the conversation too, KB.
Well, yeah, and again, I don't know about his health insurance, that kicked in with him coming back to play and everything. So, again, part of me thought, with this rumor, I guess it's the first team he's officially interviewed with, now that I think about it. But, when this was asked, at the end of the season, I still kind of came back to again, Gunner is a very high-level quarterback, going to be a senior, and the other son is going to be a freshman. I just figured, okay, we'll table this conversation for 4 years from now. But now it seems a little realer.
Yeah, I get that. Kevin Bowen joining us on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. It's Greg Rakestraw for Jay Query on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Again, you're going to try to talk as much IU football over the next few weeks as possible. That is the iron that is hottest in the fire right now. What are you looking forward to talking most once now that we are past the afterglow of this national championship?
I guess, are you saying sell the IU story?
Correct. In other words, if I took IU out of the mix, what are the things that you're actually looking forward to talking about on the morning show?
Got it. Obviously a week from Thursday is the NBA trade deadline. And, as we sit here right now, what they do over the next 10 to 12 days could have massive implications on what the new era of Tyrese Halliburton looks like around him. So I think that is a big storyline. We're now less than a month away, as crazy as it sounds, after that combine news, from, that becoming a little bit more front burner. And, what it looks like for Daniel Jones, what it looks like for Alec Pierce. I think those are interesting conversations as well. We're about a month and a half away from free agency. And then, we'll certainly, and Saturday's a big game up there in Mackey. I mean, we're now going to get a little bit more front and center with Purdue and that run. And, that story, Rake, and you know this better than anybody, but that story in many, many ways can be as joyous for that fan base as the one that we just saw in Bloomington. And honestly, it's a little bit of a different of all the close calls, all of the hopes and dreams of, the Katie era and, Hummel's ACL and Haas getting hurt and, making it to the title game. And, when you think about it, from a football program, outside of Frieza Morales, I don't know if there have been, maybe a ton of those, types of moments there. Obviously, they've had a nice run in football during the Tiller years, but still nothing to what a March into April run, albeit, throwing the cherry on top in your hometown, could be for them, particularly in a day and age of college basketball where the dominant storyline is about a dude who, played professional basketball, is now going back to Alabama, and the person that signed off on that is an Alabama booster. Like,
right.
It's just, it's so crazy. And here this Purdue team with, a core of, certainly the Indiana kids, and several of the Indiana kids were pretty under-recruited as well. So I think that storyline obviously will become, bigger and bigger as, the month of March inches closer.
All right, let's talk Colts. What is the next domino to fall event to happen on the Colts timeline?
Well, I would say just the coaching cycle to clear up. Again, Anarumo did interview in Buffalo. So, that to get through. Jim Bob Cooter interviewed their offensive coordinator with the Eagles for that OC job. So, once that is done, and typically that's right around the Super Bowl, then again, we're less than a month away from the Combine. I believe the franchise tag window opens up in around a month. That's a 2-week window. Alec Pierce, to me, seems like a more likely candidate than anybody on the roster, including Daniel Jones. So do they use that? Is it similar to Michael Pittman Jr. a couple years ago where they use it, but then they get the long-term deal done before free agency starts? So I think that's kind of where we're at. This time last year, Anarumo had just been hired. It's not like we're going through one of those coordinator searches as of now. We obviously could here, but that's probably the biggest thing. I mean, in an ideal Colts world, if you were Shane Steichen, I mean, nothing too pressing over the next couple of weeks, assuming that your staff's still intact. I guess they do need to hire a defensive line coach for those that missed that story.
Right.
Their D-line coach, Charlie Partridge, longtime college coach. He went to Notre Dame, so he's now their D-line coach there. So the Colts do need to hire that. And, that is a position group that I think you could make the case is underwhelmed, maybe more than any, considering the resources invested into it. I'd argue that's more personnel-based and coaching-based, but still that would be something they need to get done this offseason.
To some degree, I'm going to put you on the spot before I let you go. We've talked about Michael Pittman Jr.'s contract and how Michael is very well liked by the fan base, by the locker room. Production slipped a little bit this year. Is he a $29 million player? No. And the way his contract is structured and the amount of salary cap money it would free up to cut him, that seems like a done deal that he won't be back next year or he might be on a restructured deal. Who else is a candidate to be waived by to a little early because it might save the Colts more money than what that person would actually produce playing for them?
Yeah, Pittman is certainly atop that list. The other two I keep on coming back to, the future for Zaire Franklin and Kenny Moore II. Franklin has 2 years left on his deal, but there's an out this offseason that's pretty cheap from a dead cap hit. And then Kenny, I don't know if the fit with Anarumo is ideal. It just seemed like we didn't get the typical Kenny playmaking year
sure.
that he's had. Now, granted, I mean, depth at linebacker and corner are not stocked, I was going to make stock like the shelves at the grocery analogy right now, but I don't think the shelves
they're pretty bare too
right now. Yeah.
Although shout out to the Safeway at 56 in Illinois. It was in fine form at 7:15 a.m.
There you go. You and I shop there quite a lot at that Safeway there for
Uh-huh.
in Illinois. So, I think you can make the case for restructures there, but, outright cutting of either player would leave quite the void. Now, some might say, hey, Zaire, you just need to, try and, go upgrade there. And, again, at corner, you still have the Travarius Ward. I should probably throw that in there as well, Rake, in terms of the offseason items. I would assume by the combine, the Colts will have an answer on Travarius Ward playing football next year.
Right.
I think he kind of mentioned he owes it to the team to make a decision there. So that's probably another news item. They could wiggle around with some extensions for guys, Quentin Nelson, maybe even Buckner or Grover Stewart. That could open up a little bit of cap space, which I do think is really necessary. When you start to crunch the numbers, their cap space can get pretty tight pretty quick. Those other two, I would go with Michael Pittman Jr. and I would go with Kenny Moore as guys I'm a little bit in question, Pittman first, Franklin, then Kenny Moore as guys I'm a little bit in question about just exactly what it looks like financially for them moving forward.
All right, one for the bit of nerdery. What sort of cap relief would the Colts get if Mooney says, hey, I'm walking away? Does that wipe everything away from the salary cap standpoint? Does it fast forward everything to this year? How exactly do the numbers work in that scenario?
Yeah, I need to double check it. I'm pretty sure it wipes away virtually all of it.
Okay.
We haven't had, I guess Andrew Luck is quite the one, but of course, Jim Irsay decided to send him packing with some nice money in that back pocket. So that is one that I would have to look up because, he has 2 years left, I believe, on that deal. I think it was a 3-year contract originally. So, and I have no idea how all that would play out, but I think Mooney would be the first to tell you, he's done pretty good for himself from an NFL career standpoint, which I think is a factor in all of this.
Yes.
He's a former undrafted free agent. He won a Super Bowl with the Chiefs, made a Super Bowl with the 49ers. He is on his third contract. He's made great money. So is that something that, is an impact or a decision here, or a factor, I should say, in his decision?
Thanks for the time, my friend. Figure I'll see you at some point next week. I know I will on Tuesday afternoon. Thanks, buddy.
Tuesday at 2:30. I'll be on the sidewalk waiting for you.
Thank you, sir. Kevin Bowen, our annual buddy trip to South Bend. It's been mixed results for the Irish when we have made the trip. Last year, a win against Boston College when the temperature was about the same as it is now, like freakishly cold. The year before, an empty campus on Christmas break, and the Citadel got the win on the Fighting Irish. KB and I'm sure will document this next week on Tuesday and then again Friday on the morning show. All guests appear on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. Use code JAKE25, that's Jake25, for 25% off your order, and check out the jQuery bundle by searching Jake at javahouse.com. Greg Rakestraw in for jQuery. He is back on Monday. And if there's something you want to talk about, well, now's probably the time because we got guests at 1:45. We got guests at 2:15. We got a guest at 2:30, and I'm out of show at 3 because JMV is at Rally House, and they'd kind of like have him start on time. So 317-239-1070, or tweet to me at Greg Rakestraw. You're listening to 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
You're listening to Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Since you just heard JMV with former IU great Babe Laufenberg, and to give you an idea of the way my mind works, Babe would be just before the time that I kind of kept track and remembered names and knew what was going on in college football. See, he was there in 81 and 82. Lee Corso's last 2 years as the head coach at IU, put up some really good numbers in 2 years, set some passing records when he was in Bloomington, and then went on to be like a third-string quarterback for the better part of 8 or 9 years in the National Football League, and then became kind of a Cowboys broadcaster and things like that. He was also kind of the same point that I made with Dan Thompson an hour ago, saying, hey, yes, IU football has never been what it is now, but there have been some periods and some moments when this wasn't like the worst football program in major college history. And so Babe was kind of that ilk. And you heard the promo, John asking kind of the standard question of how does he translate at the next level? And he talks about accuracy. That accuracy was actually on display last night on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. They talked about breaking records. They basically used records that were, I'm sure, tricked up, souped up, etc. And now that vinyl's like a thing, I don't have to explain when I say records. They used them like clay pigeons, in case you haven't seen it yet. And Fernando hit 8 in 30 seconds. There's your example of accuracy right there. Well, in thinking about what we could talk about, and by the way, phone lines are open this segment. So if there's something you want to say, feel free. Now is the time. Phone line is open to you. 317-239-1070. You can also use that same line to text into the show, and Eddie will be kind enough to relay those messages on the air and to me simultaneously. You can always tweet to me at Greg Rakestraw as well. I made an effort, not a great effort, but at least a small effort, to get someone on the program today to talk a little NFL draft. Because I do think that is going to be one of the more captivating conversations we're going to have between now and the end of April. Fernando Mendoza seems like a slam dunk. Like he is going to be the number one pick. I even touched on early in the show, it's possible, I don't think they will, but it's possible the Raiders could trade the number one pick. Not as some sort of knock to Mendoza, but just an acknowledgement of we have so many issues on this team. You need more of a haul, and if you think you're still going to be great this year, then maybe you get the number one pick for next year. Again, it's possible, but my guess would be the Raiders are going to hold that pick, and they're going to take Fernando Mendoza. If they would trade the pick, whomever would get that pick would also take Fernando Mendoza. So we'll talk about that. And clearly, given the fact that he was on Fallon, Good Morning America, Today's Show, etc., this kid has captivated a nationwide audience. But you're going to hear Indiana University mentioned a lot in Pittsburgh the last weekend in April, because that's where the NFL draft is taking place. So I thought during the course of the break, I would just pull up as many, and trust me, I'm not normally this person, okay? Like, if I look up NFL mock draft, I'm normally the guy that stops at 32. That number's probably going to lower to somewhere in the mid-40s this year, because that's where the Indianapolis Colts will actually jump onto the board, all right, without having that first-round pick. But I wanted to look at the 7-round mocks, and I've looked at a couple so far. And I'm not going to read them to you. It's more of an overall quantity thing as to just how many Indiana Hoosier names or Indiana Hoosier players will hear their names called on day 1, on day 2, or day 3. Now, it seems a lot of folks think that Mendoza is going to be the only first-round pick. But I go to one website, and it has Elijah Surratt as a second-round pick. It has D'Angelo Pons, who did make it official today that said, hey, I'm going to the draft, which everybody assumed that would be the case, and he should. I see him at pick 49. I see Carter Smith going to the Steelers at 52. Basically, in just kind of looking at a couple, 3 of these, you're looking at 5 or 6 Indiana players going on the first 2 days of the draft to where, Mendoza's going to be the headliner of Thursday. But Indiana may have as many players taken on day 2 of the draft as anybody else, and several guys that'll be day 3. Eddie, it looks like you are wanting to join the conversation. Feel free. Or not.
I would say that of those names, one to kind of scratch off the list, Carter Smith has already announced that he's going back to IU, so that's
Good for him.
that's a huge get for the Hoosiers because he was a solid staple on that offensive line. The guy that I keep going back to just because I don't think the numbers will look good on paper, but D'Angelo Pons is what the kids call a gamer. Like, he goes out there and he just balls on Saturdays, and he's a guy that plays bigger than his size. He reminds me a lot of Kenny Moore. Like, Kenny's a smaller guy.
Sure.
They both are 5'9", but D'Angelo Pons is incredibly physical. He's always in the right spot. He knows how to make plays. And I think the same with Aiden Fisher as well.
Aiden Fisher is a guy that will, again, he's going to be a third-day pick. I have thought in watching this football team that we were looking at 9 to 10 players drafted. And again, pardon me for typing. Do you have like some interstitial music, like some background piano or jazz?
I should have something like that.
Or something along those lines, just to cover me typing.
I should have something like that.
It won't take long to type this up. And God bless Wikipedia. List of NFL draft picks from Wikipedia. Because I know there is a page that is dedicated to this. So I knew how to type it in immediately. So I didn't have the long list of dead air that I thought I would. So if I said 10 Indiana players, in fact, you know what? Just for the sake of the years, the way these picks have been bundled, let's say Indiana has 9 players drafted in the NFL draft. That would equal what they have had drafted in the last 9 seasons. They had a player drafted 5 years running, actually 6 years running, 2017 through 2022. Did not have a player drafted in 23 or 24. Had 2 players drafted last year, both by the San Francisco 49ers. Curtis Rourke being one of those, a 7th-round pick. C.J. West, the other one, being a 4th-round pick. Eddie, off the top of your head, you know the last time the Indiana had a 1st-round pick?
1st-round pick, I do not.
Okay. Eddie, you are how old again? Remind me. I want to say you're 28, 29?
I turned 28 in September.
You turned 28 in September.
Yeah.
So you're currently 27.
Yes.
Okay. The last time that Indiana had a 1st-round pick, you were not yet born. It was my senior year of high school, 1994, Thomas Lewis. And yes, here is a name that you will want to know. Probably not one that you have heard of before, but Corbett Davis. You will hear this name brought up at some point in time in April because he is the last and only, until Fernando Mendoza, 88 years later, to be the number 1 overall pick in the draft. Corbett was drafted by the Cleveland Rams. The Rams moved to L.A. in the late 40s. It's been a minute since Indiana had a number 1 pick in the draft. That is going to be Mendoza. But again, just an illustration of just how jaw-dropping the success of this Indiana football program has become. I think they will have as many draft picks this year as they have had in the last 9 years. It's kind of the equivalent of winning as many bowl games in the last 19 days as they had in program history leading up to that.
I will be fascinated or interested in watching these guys transition from college to the NFL just because I've talked about this with Jake, that Cignetti has a pro-style approach to the game and how they go about preparing for the game and how about he goes out and tries to find players for specific roles within the offense and the defense, and those players know not to play outside of what kind of skill set and capabilities they have. And so does that lead to more players like Indiana having an easier transition to the NFL and they're able to step in right away and have success?
Because they're coached like a pro?
Yeah.
Yeah, you would think so. And again, I think that's also why you see a lot of guys that are second and third day picks, where you have guys that don't have those amazing measurables, but you hope they are solid pros. I think Indiana have a lot of guys that are like that. All right, we will make the transition from football to basketball. Well, this guy could talk both, but we'll focus on basketball. Time to get your brackets ready. We're 7 weeks out, but you can start thinking of exactly who is going where and just how many, if anybody, not named Purdue, is going to the field of 68. Jerry Palm will help us break that down. When we come back, Greg Rakestraw in for Jay Query, and you're listening to 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
This is Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
A song that this gentleman heard probably ad nauseum for the last several years as the bracket expert for CBS Sports. Maybe this is the song that he heard when he finally got his new RV to leave Owensboro, Kentucky a couple of weeks ago. I'll let him explain. Jerry Palm of PalmBrackets.com joins us on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. Still working them brackets, but also literally driving across America as we speak. How are you, my friend?
Well, I guess I'm in pretty good shape because we are currently living in Montgomery, Alabama, for another couple of weeks, and we're south of the ice storm. So
True.
Like the northern part of the state may not do as well, but we're far enough south that we've managed to avoid the ice storm. So I guess that's good.
I was going to
It's gonna
say,
be cold next week, but not. We're not going to be scraping ice off the RV.
how has your it used to be the old saying was Wonder Indiana. You're literally wondering America. Other than having like a breakdown in Owensboro, Kentucky, how's it going so far?
Yeah, we just left. You know, the first time we left with the RV was the beginning of the month, and we didn't get any farther than Evansville before we had a problem. We spent 3 days there in Owensboro, and took a while to get the truck fixed. The RV itself was fine, but the truck that we're pulling it with was being uncooperative for really about the first week of this adventure. But it seems to be okay now. We'll see when we hook it up and start rolling again here in another couple of weeks.
If nothing else, it gave you time to listen to a friend of yours' recommendation. How was the world's largest barbecue buffet, the Moonlight Barbecue?
Oh, yeah, that was lovely. Yeah, that was great. It's I don't know. I'm not a big fan of buffets because you never know what you're really going to get, but everything was really good. I would go back there in a minute.
All right, good to know. All right, so let's talk brackets, shall we? And let's work our way up the food chart, so to speak, when it comes to the state of Indiana. Has Notre Dame, because of their injuries and overall play, do they merit conversation at this point?
Nope, not yet.
Okay.
Maybe, they get healthy and they get better. We can talk about them, but we're probably going to be getting late in the season before that happens, if it happens.
All right, so let's work our way up. Butler's picked up a couple of wins. Where do Butler's chances look like right now?
They need to do more. You can't rule them out. I'd say they're in better shape than Notre Dame, but Butler's got the depth of quality in the Big East is not like it is in other leagues, if only because it's smaller than the other major conferences. But they have to take advantage of those opportunities when they present themselves, and they don't really have a lot of margin for error in terms of taking, losses that they shouldn't.
In your latest bracket, how many Big East teams do you have?
4.
Okay. I was going to say 3. So 4 is actually an encouraging sign because, frankly, that gives Butler more chances to win games against teams that might be in the tournament. All right, now let's get to the Indiana Hoosiers.
Yeah.
Where do they stand at this point? Because they are starting to play their way, not starting to, they are playing their way in the wrong direction. Would you have them in the field today?
No,
Okay.
I don't have them in. They're not first 4 out. They're not too far off that list. But, no, they've got some work to do. And in general, their problem is just the lack of quality wins. Their record's not horrible or anything like that. They just haven't found a way to beat the teams they need to beat to find themselves in the field.
Same question about Butler. How many Big Ten teams do you have dancing as we speak?
I believe it's 10.
Okay. And again, in super conferences, you get more of that. And again, that's the thing with this Indiana team is that, again, the opportunities are there. They've just not shown us anything in the last 2-3 weeks that tell us they're going to take advantage of said opportunities.
Yeah, well, really, the opportunities they had in non-conference play, they didn't really take advantage of.
Fair.
Particularly either. Their best win escapes me at the moment, but it's not a team in the field. So,
right.
You need to be able to show that you can beat teams that are in the field. And the Big Ten will give them plenty of chances to do that, but they have to take advantage of them.
PalmBrackets.com is where you can find his work. Again, Jerry Palm joining us here on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. Greg Rakestraw in for Jay Query here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. No such issue with your Boilers. We know there will be dancing. They did just lose against UCLA. 1 seed, 2 seed. Where do you have the Boilers right now?
I have them as a 2. They were a 2 before the loss. They're still a 2, and that's due in part to the fact that they, built up a lot of cushion, if you will, with their really strong non-conference play. UCLA is not a terrible team. They're a bubble team. So there are worse losses than that on the road. And we were out there for that. My wife and I went out to see the LA doubleheader. And that was 2 good challenges for Purdue, and really should have won the second one, but a couple of uncharacteristic Braden Smith turnovers late and end up coming away with a loss.
This is, I guess, maybe sadly of a metrics question, but it's frankly more of an eyeball question than a metrics question. But again, as a Boilermaker, which does not affect Jerry's predictions, but he's a very proud Purdue alum, what sort of seed do they need? In other words, what is the difference for Purdue between being a 1 seed, a 2 seed, a 3 seed, et cetera, because they just have so much experience?
Yeah, I think if they're a top 3 seed, once you get to forward, your first round game is usually somebody that's basically the same as you with a different number next to them, or your second game, that is. So you really want to be your 2 or a 3 to give yourself, or no worse than that, to give yourself a pretty good path to a Final Four and Elite 8.
All right, so if Purdue's not a 1 seed, who are your 1 seeds right now?
Yeah, the 1 seeds are Houston, Duke, Arizona. Oh, not Houston. Arizona, Duke. Why am I on a brain cramp? I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Arizona.
Arizona, Duke, Nebraska, and Michigan, right?
Nebraska and Michigan. Yes, 2 Big Ten teams. Why am I drawing a blank on them? Yeah, Nebraska,
because you would never say Nebraska before now. What we say about Indiana football, we'd say it about Nebraska. So their record speaks for themselves. But in terms of the elements of their sheet, their team sheet, what about Nebraska jumps off the page at you?
Well, they've done well. They did well in non-conference play, but they played a relatively poor non-conference schedule, easily the worst non-conference schedule of anybody in the top 16 of this bracket. It's in the 200s. So it took a while for them to climb up here, but obviously they've been really good in conference play. The win at Illinois, really got everybody's attention, but, they beat Michigan State at home. This is just a remarkable story. I don't know. It's way too early to say if they're the Indiana football of this basketball season, but just as someone who's been around the Big Ten, all my life, the thought of Indiana football being a national champion in Nebraska basketball,
right,
threatening to be a number 1 seed it's a culture shock, to say the least.
The world is officially on its ear at this point because of those 2 things. Final thing before we let you go, this is not an Indiana team, but they're as close as you can be. A lot of Indiana elements to it. The gap widens further between power conference teams. There really isn't much of a thing as a mid-major anymore. You're either a several-bid league or you're a 1-bid league. Yet Miami of Ohio is 20-0 going into the weekend.
Yeah.
How do you have them in your ratings as of now?
They would not be an at-large team,
okay.
But they're about as high as you can be without being among the at-large teams in the bracket. So they're that's 12 seed, 11 seed, 12 seed, thereabouts.
And because of the fact it's nothing but league games left, let's say they run the table and they lose the MAC tournament, would they be in the at-large conversation? Or no matter what they do, is everything about what happens in Cleveland in March for them?
It's probably everything that happens for them is going to happen in Cleveland. I don't know. It's going to be really hard if they're, we'll say 33-1 or whatever that number ends up being. But they're not going to have a win over a team that's anywhere near the bracket, except for the team that wins their league in the MAC.
Sure.
They're not going to have an at-large quality win. They're not going to have anything close to an at-large quality win. And the committee have a lot to talk about if that unfortunate situation happens.
PalmBrackets.com is where you can find him, or in an RV park near you, as he is wandering the globe. And as he states, south of the ice storm, which means he's significantly south of here. Thanks for the time, my friend. We'll catch up real soon.
All right, stay safe up there.
You got it, buddy. Jerry Palm, again, of palmbrackets.com. By the way, he has Butler in his first 4 out. Now, that was as of this Monday, and they didn't do anything to hurt themselves by beating DePaul. Speaking of Butler, they play Marquette, and again, Marquette has really struggled this year. That game, it's not down the hall. Maybe it's over here in one of the side production studios. Wherever the studios of Fuego 92.7 are, they are in this building. And that's where you can hear Mark Minner and Nick Gardner tonight. Pacers here at 6:30 in terms of the pregame coverage. Butler and Marquette at 7:30. Look for it on 92.7 FM on your radio dial. We have a guest joining us towards the back half of next segment. But if there's something you want to talk about, now is the time. 317-239-1070. You're listening to The Fan. Greg Rakestraw filling in for Jay Query.
You're listening to Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Final hour of substitute teaching for me this week. And I hope you enjoy putting up with me. I enjoy conversing with you. We have a guest at 2:15. We have a guest at 2:30. I've got thank yous to hand out at 2:45, and I'm out the door by 2:55. Jake is back on Monday. John will join us a little cross chat, I'm sure, at the end of the show because he is at Rally House, and my guess would be there's just a little bit of Indiana memorabilia that he's looking to push during the course of his 3-hour tour there. So if you've got something you want to say, now is the time. We got about 10 or so minutes to get to your telephone calls, your tweets, your text, etc. 317-239-1070 is the way you get a hold of me on two of those. Joe is nice enough to call in. Good afternoon, Joe. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great, Greg. How are you?
I'm good, sir.
Hey, I've been watching the Pacers play, and I still love them. It's exciting, but I've got a question for you. I see Mathurin on the bench, and how much do they communicate with him as far as him being trade bait right now?
I would guarantee you that conversations happen. And again, I think it's going to be what can they get for him if they made a move now? Do they think they would get more of a haul if it were a sign and trade during the offseason? I think everything is going to be what benefits the team most. And secondarily, it's not like Ben's been a bad guy. They've liked having him here. It's just the way the pieces fit. His role is going to be, if everybody's healthy, he's coming off the bench or he's kind of the odd man out in the rotation. And so you have to do what helps the team to, first. But if you can do that and put him in a good position as well, then that's what Kevin Pritchard, Chad Buchanan, Rick Carlisle are going to do. Joe, anything else?
Yeah, my second question for you is, if by chance we do end up getting a top 5 pick, what's your order? Who do you like in our system between, Peterson, Boozer, and then the guy from Baylor? Put them in order for me.
Sure.
Who do you like in our system?
And Joe, to be honest with you, I don't watch enough of that level of college basketball to give you an intelligent answer. I would tend to think that if you're the Pacers and your pieces are so locked in for next year, Siakam back, Halliburton returns, Nembhard, Toppin, Nesmith, McConnell, then you kind of get, a little bit further down the line. We think Huff is a pick. He's probably truly a backup 5, but a guy that's going to get you some minutes. Jackson, Walker, But those top 6 guys, okay, Siakam's your 4. Halliburton and Nembhard can both play the 1 or play together 1 and 2. Toppin plays a small ball 5 or a 4 off the bench. Nesmith is a 3. McConnell is a 1. You get the idea. You've got Shepard under contract for next year and the year after. And again, you're paying him to be kind of a 9th or 10th guy, so that piece fits. In other words, you've got shooters and you've got guards. You need size. Well, the 3 guys that you just talked about, Peterson's a combo guard. DeBanza is more of a small forward. Boozer is more of a power forward. There really isn't a true big until you get further down the line. Like the first center I see coming off the board, and I'm at NBADraft.net, is a guy that we like the number 9 selection. And again, it looks likely the Pacers are going to get a top 5 pick. And that is why there seemingly has been a lot of, hey, can you move Mathurin and maybe another piece or 2 to then bring in a big to try to fix your Miles Turner hole and your need that you've got in a roster? Knowing basically you are being handed a free player in the draft that you don't have to go out and acquire. But can you move Mathurin either at the trade deadline or during the offseason to then bring back that extra big, knowing then the pieces all will fit around at that time.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's exciting in a weird way, right? I mean, them doing so poorly this year, but it's still exciting, and I'm looking forward to next season.
Joe, we all are. Thank you, Joe. And I almost feel bad, and again, and maybe because I don't do this every day, I can kind of do this because Eddie does it every day on this show, and then is obviously a big part of the radio network where he is still locked in for 82 games. If it's the exact opposite of the way we felt about things last year, he can't check out. He's locked in. He's dialed in every day. So I guess, Eddie, if you don't mind,
Yep.
Just how different do game days feel to you to what they did at this time last year?
They certainly feel different. It's more like you're wondering in these games now when they're very competitive. Like I remember it was after the Detroit game. I can't remember which one it was. It was one of those other road contests. Philly. They were in it against the 76ers until the fourth quarter happened. And it's getting to the point now in these games where there's going to be a lull of like 4 minutes to 5 minutes. It's not to the Mike Woodson era of the IU Hoosiers it would be 8 to 10, but there's going to be a certain part of the game, whether that's in the third quarter, the fourth quarter, first half, whenever, they're just going to go on this stretch of where they struggle offensively. And in that game, that's what happened in the fourth quarter. And going into the fourth quarter, you probably can feel it. And the one thing I will say is that I have a different level of appreciation for Pascal Siakam this year with the way that he's gone out every single night, and he leaves it all out there on the floor every single night. When they panned him on the bench at the end of these games, he looks absolutely drained after every single game because he's doing as much as he possibly can to put this team in a position to win. And hopefully along the way, they're instilling some confidence, and they're trying to build these winning ways that can help them when they get Tyrese Halliburton back next year, whenever they find whomever their center is for next year, and then hopefully a top 3 pick as well to boot.
The thing that intrigues me, and again, I used this line earlier, and I'll bring it back up again now. I watch maybe a little more major college basketball because, let's face it, the basketball I normally see is either low Division I or non-Division I. So like on Saturday or Sunday afternoon, rather, I've got IU Indy. Tomorrow afternoon, I've got Marian University. From time to time, I'll mix in an Indiana State game. And those are the games that I'm calling. So that's the level that I see. When I make it a point to watch a college basketball game, because I'm not doing those college basketball games, I'm doing high school basketball games. So I can tell you about where guys are going to go play next year. But when I'm actually watching, I watch Purdue because they have been so good and they are so entertaining to watch. Okay. But the two other teams that I find myself watching are Kansas because of Flory Badunga and wanting to see him do well, having covered him at Kokomo. But the other guy that I grin from ear to ear seeing his name on a mock draft is Braylon Mullins, because I know the dad and because I have known Josh and Katie, as in mom and dad, for so long. In fact, happy belated birthday, Josh. I think he took 45 earlier this week. And I know them because Josh played for us on our last NCAA tournament team at IUPUI, now IU Indy. So while Joe asks a great question, and I can rattle off that Darren Peterson is number 1, Debanza is number 2, and Boozer is number 3 in terms of the latest mock draft, and any of those guys would help this basketball team. To be honest with you, I am drawn to the fact that Braylon Mullins, who I covered his games at Greenfield Central last year, is listed as the 8th pick in the mock draft. That's typically where my eyes tend to go because I want to go root for the kids that I have seen, and I want to see them be successful at the next level, level beyond, etc. But frankly, any of those players, if the Pacers get to the top pick, which they've never had, never been the first pick, second pick, Wayman Tisdale, second pick, Rick Smits. It's almost like a bit of badge of honor. You've never had the first pick. You don't want to be in the NBA draft lottery. But if you're going to be bad and be bad for 1 year, the best way to get out of it is to be the number one pick. And obviously, it's not guaranteed that you have the worst record and you have the number one pick in the draft. But for what it's worth, the Pacers are a half game back of the Pelicans for having the worst record in the NBA. Pacers go into tonight's game at 10-35. The Pels in the Western Conference, 10-36. And I haven't had to know what's been going on with the NBA draft lottery for some time, but I think now you get the same number of ping pong balls or chances if you finish in the bottom 5. I believe that is the case. I will study up more before we get to draft lottery time. All right. 317-239-1070. However, we have a special guest that is joining us. The Indy Ignite have just begun their second season, and they have begun it very well. They are 3-0, and all of these matches have taken place away from home. They are happy to be home, maybe not about the weather forecast for tomorrow night, but happy to be home nonetheless. And one of their star players, in Lydia Martin, is kind enough to join us now on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. Lydia, thank you so much for the time. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so off to a 3-0 start this season. Obviously, you can't be better than that. What's been key to you and your teammates' success so far?
Yeah, well, we just have such an amazing staff, and Lauren, our new head coach, has just come in and just totally changed the program and how we kind of view the game and play it. And she brought in 15 great girls who can all play and win matches. And we saw that this weekend. We had a totally different lineup than we did the first two games, and it's just really exciting to play with a group of girls who are so passionate about winning.
Team can be doing better, and clearly you can't either, because you were the league's player of the week. Congratulations.
Thank you.
A record for blocks in a match against Columbus with 11, and the record for blocks in a set with 6. What's that feeling like? And are you keeping track of that in your head during the match?
Oh, not really, no. It's just kind of playing the game, right? And so obviously you want to block as many balls as you can and score as many points, but it's a team effort, and I think part of that is just scouting and, playing the game and reading your opponent really well. But no, I'm not necessarily keeping track of it when I'm playing. I just want to be really present in the moment.
Again, Lydia Martin, our guest, Greg Rakestraw for Jake Query here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. All right, you had the pleasure of playing for the team last year. What are your expectations, whether it's the opening match, which is always a big deal, or any of the other 13 home matches you'll have during the course of the season? I think that's the number, by the way. What's the atmosphere like when you're playing a home match in Fishers?
Oh, there's nothing like it. We have the most amazing event center, and the fans are just absolutely amazing. I'm really excited for our home opener match tomorrow. I know some people are a little skeptical about the weather, but we're still a full go. We had a fan fest planned for outside prior to the match at 5, but that's been moved inside. So people are more than welcome to still come. I mean, it's going to be a really good game, and ultimately our goal is to win and carry on throughout the season with all of our wonderful fans. I love to meet as many people as I can.
The staff was great about making sure it has as much information on you as possible. So I know you played at Oklahoma. I know you're from Anderson, South Carolina. But frankly, until the last couple of years, you really couldn't truly be a professional volleyball player and call the States home. You had to go overseas. So in between Oklahoma and the Ignite, any overseas playing professionally, or has all your professional experience been here in Indianapolis or in the States?
Yeah, my first season professionally was last year here in the States, and I wasn't even a draft pick. And Indy took a chance on me, which was really, really special, and I'm so grateful for it.
So what is it like? Because, again, those that came before you in the not-too-distant past knew if you wanted to play past college, I mean, it's not a bad thing to travel the world, but it meant you're going to be a long way from home. What is it like to be able to play here in the States?
Getting to be so close to your friends and family and just those who have supported you to get to where you are and them show up at games is so fun, but it's also so inspiring to tell the younger girls who are wanting to play that it's possible for you to play professionally here, and just getting to play for an amazing staff and just see the sport grow. It's just been amazing. Indiana
has always been kind of a sneaky good volleyball state. Like one of the nation's hotbeds of volleyball was just up the road from you in Fishers in Delaware County and Muncie. And frankly, that has now kind of spread all around the state with club volleyball and et cetera. But when you moved here, Did you kind of learn that quickly that the high school scene and club scene was pretty good here too?
Oh, definitely. I mean, and we love as a team going to different clubs and just meeting all the girls, maybe signing some autographs and just investing in who they are as people. And then I even coached high school for Fishers this season, and that was just a blast getting to know those girls and cheering them on and letting them know, like, hey, I started where you were too. So it's just cool to see all that progress happen.
I would hope there was a good level of buy-in because you're supposed to listen to your coach regardless. But when they ask for your credentials, you say, you see that arena over there? I play there. I would hope buy-in was pretty quick with what you were telling them, right?
Yeah, definitely.
All right, you talked about a new coach in Lauren because obviously, for those that don't know, you guys were the league runners-up a year ago. Mm-hmm. So clearly, year one went exceedingly well. But you've liked the changes you've seen with the new head coach this year. Tell us about what is different and why this is such a good thing for you and your teammates.
Yeah, I think she just brings so much experience, right? She played professionally. She's coached professionally. And I think that's something that we're kind of hoping the league continues to buy into, of getting just some more international experience. She's just, I don't even have enough words to say about her. We just respect her so much as a coach. She's very straightforward, but encouraging at the same time. She pushes you past your limits, but also she's so smart and just sees the game so analytically, but in a way to keep it simple at the same time on the game day. Like, she doesn't want to make us overthink, but we have much more preparation coming into games.
A second year here in Indy, or at least in the Indy area. What do you like about living in central Indiana so far?
I think it's so up and coming, and I can go out to the store and still meet so many new people, and everyone's really friendly. I love that everyone's just so involved with sports, whether it's the Colts or the Pacers, the Fever, the Indy 11. Like, there's so many different sports teams here, and that's something I've never really been a part of. And so getting to bring Indy Ignite and volleyball into that space is just so wonderful.
As the voice of the Indy 11, God bless you for including us. Thank you for dropping that at the end of that run. All right. And again, season openers are special, even if weather's not going to be great outside. But whether it's coming to tomorrow night's match or a latter home match, what should fans expect when they come see the Ignite play at home?
Oh, just so much excitement. Like, we want you guys to get involved. I love interacting with the crowd during the game. Honestly, it kind of keeps me grounded and just loose. But I think you're going to expect so many fan engagement. We're going to have drinks and food you can buy and T-shirts to be thrown out. And it's just such a fun game to watch. And you can get really excited on your toes, and we'll have lots of cheers for you to buy into as well. So that's just really fun.
Lydia, I appreciate your time the day before a game. Best of luck tomorrow and the rest of the season. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you so much.
You got it. Lydia Martin, kind enough to join us. Now, Jake has really embraced the Indy Ignite, and frankly, they're a supporter of the show as well. But typically, if you're going to hear somebody talk about the Ignite on the radio station, it is Jake. So, Eddie, like, he was there when they were doing draft picks earlier this year, correct? Mm-hmm. I'm sure he's been courtside for matches. So what has Jake's conversation been about this relatively new franchise now in year number 2?
We haven't had much conversation yet, Greg, just because, I mean, they're early into the season, only 3 matches in. They first home one tomorrow. I think Jake and I are both going tomorrow.
Okay.
I know Jake for sure is going, me to be determined.
Right.
But I'm
because
sure
you still live on the south side, right?
I do, yes.
Okay. Maybe a carpool from Jake's #Midtown reference or residence might be the way to go.
Yeah, the Boo Mansion is what I call it. Yeah, the Boo Mansion.
Nice.
Yeah.
Have you been on Boo duty, by the way, anytime soon? Recently?
Not recently. I did ask Jake yesterday how Boo is doing. Boo is alive and well, is what he says. So that's
and
good
that was
to know.
it, huh?
Yes.
Kind of played it low.
He did.
All right. What was Jake doing today, by the way? Not that really anybody's business.
I think he just
curiosity.
wanted to take a day off. He had a day off to use, and he's like, I'll just use it Friday.
Don't leave any PT on the table.
He said he had some errands to run.
I was given that advice by somebody down the hall just a few moments ago.
Yeah. I think that's exactly what it was, and I know he's taking the day off running some errands, so he could be listening. He could not be listening. I don't know.
Well, hello, Jake. We hope we're doing you proud on the show today. We will step aside, and speaking of Jake, we will hear from him when we get back because it's Feel Good Friday, and even when Jake takes a Friday off, he doesn't take a Friday off from this segment. So magically, you'll hear Jake Query after this on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Time for Franciscan Health Feel Good, Good for the Heart Friday. And, of course, Franciscan, #1 heart program for Indiana in cardiology by Health Grades, #1 in Indiana for interventional coronary care and major cardiac surgery by CareChex, and always offering the very affordable heart scan for just $49. You can self-refer, pay out of pocket. You get a free heart health risk assessment with it, and it is non-invasive, oh so easy, but also oh so important. Just $49. You can always find information at franciscanhealth.org/screening bundles or call 833-238-0688. I'll give the number again in a couple of minutes, I promise. That's 833-238-0688. But today I want to talk about the longevity, if you will, for your heart, the prevention when it comes to making sure that you are avoiding any sort of potential for heart disease. And so joining me now, we've talked to him before, but we will bring him back on again. He is always thorough and good. He is the Service Line Director of Cardiological Design for Franciscan Health. Dr. George Lollet joins me on the program. Doctor, it's a pleasure. How are you?
Good afternoon, Jake. Good to be back with you.
I want to talk about this aspect. You know, we all talk about and think about aging and, you know, what happens when we get older and things like that. And I've started to hear this buzzword of heart age. You know, hey, your heart age. And I think, well, I'm 53, so my heart age is 53. That seems simple enough. But what exactly is heart age, and how is it different from specifically the age you see on your driver's license?
Well, this is a great question, Jake, and it's been asked by our patients more often nowadays. And essentially, heart age refers to how your heart and blood vessels appear based on risk factors like blood pressure, cholesterol, blood sugar, smoking, and fitness level. And it's not the number of birthdays you've had. And so for example, someone who's 40 years old might have a heart age of 60 years old if they have untreated high blood pressure, uncontrolled diabetes. But the good news is that unlike your chronological age or real age, heart age can improve and get better with the right interventions.
And those interventions, doctor, you know, I know we talk to people a lot about the importance of a heart scan and just kind of getting that heart health risk assessment, but other interventions that can take place with that, how much of heart disease is preventable with that early intervention?
So I would say the majority of heart disease, roughly 80%, is preventable with early identification and treatment of risk factors. So traditional things that a lot of people are aware of: high blood pressure, high cholesterol, obesity, which leads to insulin-resistant diabetes, obviously smoking, poor sleeping, and inactivity drive most of our risk factors and cardiovascular disease. Therefore, addressing these risk factors early on, before patients have symptoms, dramatically reduces heart attacks, heart failure, and stroke later in life.
Dr. George Lollet is my guest from Franciscan Health. We're talking about heart longevity, essentially, and just, you know, the preventative nature of it, and then also the tackling of once you do have those issues, like I do, for example, and just being aware. Doctor, one of those things that I would assume, and we're still early in the year here, so it's time for people to, you know, it's never too late to say, you know what, I'm going to make changes. And that includes just nutritionally speaking. Is there anything out there in terms of a diet? I think we all know of what probably is good for the heart. Is there anything that actually is detrimental that maybe people aren't aware of, and that it may be time to say, you know what, start thinking about something different nutritionally?
Great question, Jake. And what I would say, and what I want our listeners to remember, first and foremost, consistency in diet and habits matters more than perfection. And so there are a lot of things that we can change, and it's never late. And so things to keep an eye on would be focusing and emphasizing whole foods, vegetables, fruits, nuts, and seeds, prioritizing lean protein, especially fish and plant-based sources, choosing healthy fats, olive oil, omega-3, and limiting ultra-processed foods, junk food, excess sugar, and refined carbohydrates. If you do those things, you will drastically change the long-term risk of having cardiovascular problems, heart attacks, and strokes.
When you talk about, you know, kind of consistency, is when somebody goes through the process here, you know, just for example, the different strategies they're coming up with, nutritionally, exercise, all of those. Do you kind of evolve them as you go along? In other words, is what's good for somebody at 30 different than at 60 than at 80 and et cetera?
It is. And so the goal shifts from just adding years to adding healthy years. And you do that by changing your strategy with time. So prevention is not a one-size-fits-all. So it should evolve with age, to your point. And so in younger adults, the focus is lifestyle, fitness, early risk detection, and pursuing aerobic exercise. In midlife, prevention becomes more data-driven. So and nowadays, we're fortunate to have a lot of good technology dispensed. So imaging, biomarkers, blood work, aggressive risk modification. And later in life, in older adults, what you need to focus on, and what the data has been suggesting more and more, is preserving muscle mass, balance, vascular health, and then quality of life becomes the quality of life becomes as important as preventing heart attacks.
How is longevity medicine? Dr. George Lole is my guest from Franciscan Health on this Feel Good, Good for the Heart Friday. Doctor, how is longevity medicine changing the way that we're kind of approaching all of this when it comes to heart disease and its prevention?
So the field in general, and including longevity, and especially when it comes to cardiology, is moving from reactive to a proactive field. So instead of waiting for a heart attack, we use different tools like advanced imaging, so calcium scores, metabolic inflammatory markers, personalized risk profiling to reduce that risk. So this allows us to intervene years and sometimes decades earlier, tailoring prevention to an individual rather than treating everyone the same.
Doctor, this last one, we kind of touched on this in the last couple of answers, but to put it in simple terms, if there are three things that someone should really narrow in on, whether it be something they need to maintain doing or something that they need to alter to their lifestyles, when it comes to the heart longevity, when it comes to keeping that heart at a young age of a heart age, what are three things that you would emphasize for our listeners?
If you had to narrow it down to three things, I would say number one, control your blood pressure and weight, metabolic health. Number two, move daily, both aerobic exercise and strength training to preserve that muscle mass. And lastly, prioritize sleep and stress management. They directly affect the heart rhythm, blood pressure, and inflammation.
Doctor, it's always a great conversation. It is always beneficial, and I want to thank all you guys because, and gals, the number of people, and I can only imagine from your standpoint, right, you're doing this every single day, but the number of people that do stop me and say, hey, you know what, I appreciate you talking about any of the number of different things we've talked about with Franciscan because it illuminated for somebody something either for themselves or for a loved one that they didn't think was of concern. They went, they got it addressed, they started to do those early steps. That's what it's all about. And you guys are the ones that facilitate that in your work. And I certainly appreciate it as well as the conversation today and wish you the best of weekends, but always appreciate the conversation.
Thank you, Jake. It's always a pleasure to be with you on your talk show, and you have a great weekend as well.
Appreciate it. Dr. George Lole from Franciscan Health, always appreciate the time. And again, a reminder, folks, that heart scan, just $49 heart scan at Franciscan Health, franciscanhealth.org/screening bundles, or you can always call 833-238-0688. That's 833-238-0688. And, of course, that $49 heart scan could be life-saving, non-invasive, and oh, so simple. Our thanks, as always, to Franciscan Health for their Franciscan Health Feel Good segments. Next week, another story about a feel-good story in the world of sports here in Central Indiana.
Plumbing.
You're listening to Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
How often when you play music, Eddie, does Jake respond with, I've seen this person in concert? Does it happen on a semi-regular basis?
Not that often. He doesn't automatically go to like the concert aspect. He goes, oh, this song was the top hit of like 1984 or something like that.
Right. Well, this was not 1984.
Or I love that song.
It was closer to 84 than it is present day. Just like, again, of all of the Indiana stats that we trotted out, that the last team to go 16-0 in a major college football season was Yale in 94, which is closer to the signing of the Declaration of Independence than it would be to modern day. But I saw Montel Jordan in concert, summer of 95.
How was it?
At the artist formerly known as Deer Creek. He was one of 3 acts that played. Boys to Men was the star of said show. I have completely spaced on who the 3rd act that was. We went because I was going with my girlfriend at the time, and we were broken up less than 2 months later. So, frankly, a lot of the details of that show have kind of exited from my mind, other than I know that I saw him at Deer Creek in the summer of 1995. There you go. 317-239-1070 is the telephone number. John will check in at some point in time from Rally House, which is where he is doing his show between 3 and 6 o'clock. So if there's something you would like to talk about that we have not covered yet on the program, now is a good time to get that in. The only time that I have really mentioned the upcoming AFC and NFC championship games this weekend really has been when we had Kevin Bowen on the show back during the 1 o'clock hour. So I guess allow me to weigh in on both of those things. Patriots and Broncos, both 14-3 during the regular season. Obviously, no Bo Nix for the Denver Broncos. And I have not exactly been seeking out a lot of NFL coverage this week, previewing the games. But when I have happened to catch kind of things in passing, one of the things that I would kind of go, here's how I would do this differently. Denver has a much better chance if Bo Nix is the starting quarterback. I mean, duh. He's the starting quarterback for a reason. He's the guy they have invested their future in. And I think Bo Nix is a good NFL quarterback at this point. He's not a great NFL quarterback at this point, but he's in year number 2. He clearly has a great offensive mind that he is playing for in Sean Payton. I think he's going to continue to develop, but the Broncos aren't exactly here because of Bo Nix. They are here because of what they have done defensively for a good chunk of the season. So, yeah, it hurts it's Jarrett Stidham. And Jarrett, to say he has not played much would be a bit of an understatement. Again, this is having me dance until I can pull up his NFL stats because they are not overly significant in terms of his opportunity to play. He has appeared in 20 games over the course of 7 NFL seasons. He appeared in 1 game this regular season, and he took a knee. That's all he did. He got a smattering of playing time in the COVID 2020 season for the Patriots. Played briefly, I think, for Josh McDaniels would be my assumption in 22 with the Las Vegas Raiders. Has never appeared in more than 5 games in an NFL season and has not thrown a pass in an NFL game since 2023. So, yes, Bo Nix would be a better option, but it's not like I think that Bo Nix is the guy that has carried his team to this point. Like if it was the Bills in this game and Josh Allen got hurt on one of the last plays of the game, sorry, Mitch Trubisky, I don't exactly like the Bills' chances. In this one, you get to be at home. The unique nature of playing at Mile High. And, again, it's your defense that got you to this point. And you've got 7 days to game plan for this. All that being said, I'm probably still going to go with the Patriots in terms of winning this one. Again, my level of care is not great, to be honest with you. But I would say Patriots in a low-scoring game and a close game. I don't even know what the line is at this point on that one. But maybe I'd take the Broncos and the points, but I'd still take the Patriots to win outright. Second game of the day.
It would be 4.5.
4.5. Okay, I think it's like a field goal game, right around that time. I think it's a one-score game. So that line is probably not as big as I thought it was going to be.
Total 42.5. That's a little bit
I'd go under.
than I thought. Yeah, me too.
I'd go under on that one too. All right, Rams and Seahawks. Obviously, the Rams, we saw both these teams during the course of this season. Seahawks have been great. The Colts obviously had a chance to beat them when they played back in December in Phillip Rivers' first game, but didn't. Seahawks at home, but it's a place the Rams play on a regular basis. So they're used to playing there. I'm probably, if I go with the road team in game one, Seahawks in a close one. I'm kind of torn on that one. I probably have a stronger feel on the AFC game than I do the NFC game. I'm sure John will do something similar to this between 3 and 6, except he will do it where there are mountains of IU T-shirts that you can go buy. He joins us now for the Crosstalk segment of the show. It is brought to us by our friends at Love Heating and Air Conditioning. And basically, while I didn't go to school with the Love family, they've been servicing my home for the better part of 20 years as well. And I guess, my guess is Jake has never played tennis with Chris and John. I have. 317-353-2141. LoveHVAC.com for more information. Which Rally House location are you at, my friend?
82nd Street. This is called, Greg, Clearwater Springs, I think. Really just a little bit down from the Allisonville Road, 82nd Street intersection right there. So there's, Haverty's and an Aldi right next to this place, too. But it is packed with people. By the way, Greg, there is, I just bought this for Laney, there is a hoodie that on the back has going to Florida or coming back with a championship. It has got Lee Corso driving the bus and the Bison on top of the bus. It is pretty awesome. That is a must-have with Corso on it in the fashion in which he is. And that's just one of the many things you got to choose from here.
By the way, as a side note, how do we have daughters that are 16 and 14? How did we get here?
It's crazy. It is crazy. I know you feel the same way with Laney. Yeah, she's still like 8 years old to me, and I explain this to her all the time. I go, you might as well forget it because you're going to be 23, and I'm going to think of you as age. She's starting to make like adult decisions, right, Greg, and it's incredibly weird to me. Odd. Yeah.
Understand that completely. All right, what's coming on the show today?
Well, we're going to get Don Fisher, voice of the Hoosiers from Rutgers. They have an early game. He's going to join us coming up here at 3 o'clock. Don Fisher, Bob Lovell. You know Bob very well. I think Matt Surface maybe a little bit later on, I believe. Buckets, Bobby Riddell, the Boilermaker Radio Network. Purdue's got a big one against Illinois with a bounce back coming up tomorrow and that opportunity. And Lindsey Monroe, friend of the show, is going to join us here live because we've got inclement weather on the inbound. So we need somebody with their, how should I put this, meteorological chops, and that is Lindsey Monroe. And she's going to stop here live.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
Yes,
you are. This is the difference in our 6 or 7 year age gap. I grew up hearing stories of the blizzard of 78. You lived it. How long were you off of school? How long were you stuck in your house?
Easton Green did not go to school for a month. Now, I wasn't stuck in my house at all. We went out, and we were all over the place out in the snow. It was just a different time, different place, different era. But here's the story I have. The weekend or the time leading up to it, I had a tournament out of Bedford at the Boys Club when we were in second grade, and we were playing at the Marion Powell Club in Marion, Indiana, and I got absolutely worked by Derek Keys that weekend. Greg, worked. He made me cry when I was 8 years old. I got so worked over by Derek Keys, and we're on our way home, and a lot of them stopped and spent the night in a hotel, just kind of wanted to hang out, and then my grandparents and my mom made us press forward, and we beat the blizzard home, and a lot of those folks got holed up in a hotel for the better part of a week or something. It was amazing. It really was, and it's vivid in my memory. But a month-long hiatus. And, Greg, the best part about it is what? We did not have to make an hour, not a minute of that time that we missed up. It was glorious.
If I remember right, and if I can radio carbon date you, I think literally we had to start making up days your senior year of high school.
Yeah.
I think that's exactly when that process. And my guess is you didn't make up squat for those days before you graduate from Eastern Green. Just a guess.
You know what? Half the time I didn't even make it there, Greg. So, yeah, I didn't make up anything. We didn't make up one single moment of that month long. But,
that's because you also had a smoking
78.
lounge. There's also that, too.
Yeah, we did have a smoking lounge, too. But, Greg, man, good to hear your voice, and thanks for being in here today, brother.
Hey, by the way, it was great filling in for you on Tuesday. And secondarily, you and I haven't had a conversation since your trip to South Florida. How was it?
It was awesome. Great time. We did a lot of things with Bullseye. Kyle Kinnett is first class, and you know this as well. Put together a terrific time for everybody involved. And I actually got to go out on a yacht with Isaiah Jones's family. It was me and J Law, who was hanging out with me, and Matt Goins, who was the AAA president. We met them at a seafood restaurant on the water in Fort Lauderdale, and they roll up on this yacht, and we all eat lunch. I drank lunch. They ate lunch. And then we got back on their yacht and went out. And it was great stories. DJ Jones, if you don't know the backstory to him, he's a former Ohio State tight end. His son Isaiah didn't get recruited by Ohio State. Of course, there are many overtures now as he goes into his senior season, but he wants that legacy, which he has earned, he and his teammates at IU, and is going to maintain that. But incredible stories across the board that Isaiah Jones's dad told us, because we went back to their house and hung out for a little bit too. Just very gracious, letting us hang out with them, and it was a fantastic time. Hard Rock's an awesome place too. It is a great place to watch a football game.
How much I can see how different it is, but obviously you've experienced Super Bowls there. Just how different is it from when we were back there 15, 20 years ago?
Here's the weirdest thing about it, and this is the one thing that I noticed immediately. They don't have televisions in the concourse.
Huh.
Like when you're standing and waiting in line, at least where I was, I didn't see a television anywhere. If you're waiting to get beer or food or waiting to go to the bathroom, there was no TV there. But it is one of those, I think it's reminiscent of the Rose Bowl. It doesn't keep going up, for example, like Lucas Oil Stadium does. It keeps going out, right? So you feel like you're closer to the field, even though you're not, because you're not looking at it from up above like you're in a balcony or something like that. I just thought we were in the Section 300, and it was a great view of the game. And I thought every seat kind of felt like it was in similar fashion, Greg.
I know you well enough to know you can operate on less sleep than most. How much sleep did you have Monday night into Tuesday?
I had an hour and a half, and then Carl, Showbiz calls me at like 5:45 and says, "Can you go on with Tony here in about an hour?" And I said, "Thanks a lot, Showbiz, for that." But honestly, shout out to Showbiz, because I would have absolutely missed the bus to the airport. There's no doubt about that. So Showbiz got me on with Tony Katz, and then I also made the transit bus on time to get back to the airport. But yeah, about an hour and a half. Hey, Greg, I met the entire town of Zionsville while I was there. There was nobody in Zionsville. Like, everybody was in South Florida from Zionsville, but it was a great group. The Diplomat is a destination for you in South Florida, without question. Going on vacation, Hollywood Beach, Florida, the Diplomat is a great place. There was a Publix in a block away, so I was loaded with cottage cheese from Publix. I was all good, man. It was glorious.
Have fun at Rally House, buddy. Be good.
Thank you, pal.
You got it. JMV, and he is with you officially in about 7 minutes here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Again, Rally House, 82nd Street, Northside, Clearwater Springs is where he will go. So since I've got like 2 minutes left to go on the show, I don't think this is using a bully pulpit, but this is me taking advantage of having the radio seat for another 120 seconds or so. I do a variety of things from a broadcasting standpoint. I think that's well known. But one of the things that I have been active in for the last 10 years is the Indiana Sports Writers and Sportscasters Association. And if you follow me on Twitter, you knew that I had the honor of announcing the upcoming Hall of Fame class and yearly award winners. So I thought I would end the show by recognizing those same folks that I tweeted out a day ago. So the Hall of Fame class, Anthony Anderson, longtime reporter for the Elkhart Truth. Roger Grossman, the voice of the Warsaw Tigers on WRSW in Warsaw. The late and great Terry Hutchins, of the Indianapolis Star, author of 13 books, cover of all things Indy University sports. And I love seeing some tributes to Hutch this week as well with the championship event. My buddy Rick Morwick from the Johnson County Daily Journal. Jim Russell of the Indianapolis News, then served as the SID for the Indiana High School Athletic Association for many years. Vince Welch of WIBC, of Wish TV, of MyIndy TV, of ABC, of Fox Sports as well. Those are the Hall of Fame class. The individual award winners, Rob Blackman, the Marv Bates Sportscaster of the Year. Josh Cook of the News Tribune in Jeffersonville was the Corky Lamb Sports Writer of the Year. A person that you'll hear John or me or Kevin thank during the football season, Matt Connie, the Vice President of Football Communications for the Indianapolis Colts, got the Bob Williams Helping Hand Award. And the Ron LeMasters Lifetime Achievement Award went to Sam Simmermaker, the radio voice of Columbus Sports, for 64 years in the organization's Lifetime Achievement Award. Congratulations to all those guys. The banquet to recognize them, April the 12th at Vala Vista in Greenwood. If you want to go, hit me up. We'll get you some tickets. I got to go. John standing by. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.